Today I'm continuing to read from On the Shortness of Life by Seneca. Today is part 2. I'm always surprised to see some people demanding the time of others and meeting a most obliging response. Both sides have in view the reason for which the time is asked, and neither regards the time itself, as if nothing there is being asked for and nothing given. They are trifling with life's most precious commodity, being deceived because it's an intangible thing, not open to inspection and therefore reckoned very cheap. In fact, almost without any value. People are delighted to accept pensions and gratuities for which they hire out their labor or their support or their services. But nobody works out the value of time. Men use it lavishly as if it cost nothing. But if death threatens these same people, you will see them praying to their doctors. If they are in fear of capital punishment, you will see them prepared to spend their all to stay alive. So inconsistent are they in their feelings. But if each of us could have the tally of his future years set before him, as we can of our past years, how alarmed would be those who saw only a few years ahead, and how carefully would they use them. And yet it is easy to organize an amount, however small, which is assured. We have to be more careful in preserving what will cease at an unknown point. But you are not to think that these people do not know how precious time is. They commonly say to those they are particularly fond of that they are ready to give them some of their years, and they do give them without being aware of it. But the gift is such that they themselves lose without adding anything to the others. But what they actually do not know is whether they are losing. Thus, they can bear the loss of what they do not know has gone. No one will bring back the years, no one will restore you to yourself. Life will follow the path it began to take, and will neither reverse nor check its course. It will cause no commotion to remind you of its swiftness, but glide on quietly. It will not lengthen itself for a king's command or a people's favor. As it started out on its first day, so it will run on, nowhere pausing or turning aside. What will be the outcome? You have been preoccupied while life hastens on. Meanwhile, death will arrive, and you have no choice in making yourself available for that. Can anything be more idiotic than certain people who boast of their foresight? They keep themselves officiously preoccupied in order to improve their lives. They spend their lives in organizing their lives. They direct their purposes with an eye to a distant future, but putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Listen to the cry of our greatest poet, who, as though inspired with divine utterance, sings salutary verses. Life's finest day for wretched mortals here is always first to flee. Why do you linger? He means, why are you idle? If you don't grasp it first, it flees. And even if you do grasp it, it will still flee. So you must match time's swiftness with your speed in using it, and you must drink quickly, as though from a rapid stream that will not always flow. In chastising endless delay too, the poet very elegantly speaks not of the finest age, but finest day. However greedy you are, why are you so unconcerned and so sluggish while time flies so fast, extending months and years in a long sequence ahead of you? The poet is telling you about the day and about this very day that is escaping. So can it be doubted that for wretched mortals, that is the preoccupied, the finest day is always the first to flee? Old age overtakes them while they are still mentally childish, and they face it unprepared and unarmed, for they have made no provision for it. Stumbling upon it suddenly and unawares, and without realizing that it was approaching day by day. Just as travelers are beguiled by conversation or reading or some profound meditation, and find they have arrived at their destination before they knew they were approaching it, so it is with this unceasing and extremely fast-moving journey of life, which waking or sleeping we make at the same pace. The preoccupied become aware of it only when it is over. If I wanted to divide my theme into different headings and other proofs, I would find many arguments to prove that the preoccupied find life very short. But Fabianus, who was not one of today's academic philosophers but the true old-fashioned sort, used to say that we must attack the passions by brute force and not by logic, that the enemy's line must be turned by a strong attack and not by pinpricks, for vices have to be crushed rather than picked at. Still, in order that the people concerned may be censured for their own individual faults, they must be taught and not just given up for lost. Life is divided into 3 periods, past, present, and future. Of these, the present is short, the future is doubtful, the past is certain. For this last is the one over which fortune has lost her power, which cannot be brought back to anyone's control. But this is what preoccupied people lose, for they have no time to look back at their past, and even if they did, it is not pleasant to recall activities they are ashamed of. So they are unwilling to cast their minds back to times ill spent, which they dare not relive if their vices are in recollection become obvious. Even those vices whose insidious approach was disguised by the charm of some momentary pleasure, no one willingly reverts to the past unless all his actions have passed his own censorship, which is never deceived. The man who must fear his own memory is the one who has been ambitious in his greed, arrogant in his contempt, uncontrolled in his victories, and treacherous in his deceptions, rapacious in his plundering, and wasteful in his squandering. And yet this is period of our time which is sacred and dedicated, which has passed beyond all human risks, and is removed from fortune's sway, which cannot be harassed by want or fear or attacks of illness. It cannot be disturbed or snatched from us. It is an untroubled, everlasting possession. If the present we have only one day at a time, each offering a minute at a time, but all the days of the past will come to your call. You can detain and inspect them at your will, something which the preoccupied have no time to do. It is the mind which is tranquil and free from care, which can roam through all the stages of its life. The minds of the preoccupied, as if harnessed in a yoke, cannot turn around and look behind them. So their lives vanish into an abyss. And just as it is no use pouring any amount of liquid into a container without a bottom to catch and hold it, so it does not matter how much time we are given if there is nowhere for it to settle. It escapes through the cracks and holes of the mind. The present time is extremely short, so much so that some people are unaware of it. For it is always on the move, flowing on in a rush. It ceases before it has come, and does not suffer delay any more than the firmament or the stars, whose unceasing movement never pauses in the same place. And so the preoccupied are concerned only with the present, and it is so short that it cannot be grasped. And even this is stolen from them while they are involved in their many distractions. In a word, would you like to know how they do not live long? See how keen they are to live long. Feeble old men pray for a few more years. They pretend they are younger than they are. They confront themselves by this deception and fool themselves as eagerly as if they fooled fate at the same time. But when at last some illness has reminded them of their mortality, how terrified do they die, as if they were not just passing out of life, but being dragged out of it. They exclaim that they were fools because they have not really lived, and that if only they can recover from this illness, they will live in leisure. Then they reflect how pointlessly they acquire things they never would enjoy, and how all their toil has been in vain. But for those whose life is far removed from all business, it must be amply long. None of it is frittered away, none of it scattered here and there, none of it committed to fortune, none of it lost through carelessness, none of it wasted on largesse, none of it superfluous. The whole of it, so to speak, is well invested. So however short, it is fully sufficient, and therefore whenever his last day comes, the wise man will not hesitate to meet death with a firm step. Perhaps you want to know whom I would call the preoccupied. You must not imagine I mean just those who are driven from the law court only by the arrival of the watchdogs, or those whom you see crushed either honorably in their own crowd of supporters or contemptuously in someone else's, or those whose social duties bring them forth from their own homes to dash them against someone else's doors, or those whom the praetor's auction spear occupies in acquiring disreputable gain, which will one day turn rank upon them. Some men are preoccupied even in their leisure, in their country house, on their couch, in the midst of a solitude, even when quite alone, they are their own worst company. You could not call theirs a life of leisure, but an idle preoccupation. Do you call that man leisured who arranges with anxious precision his Corinthian bronzes, the cost of which is inflated by the mania of a few collectors, and spends most of the day on rusty bits of metal, who sits at a wrestling ring? For shame of us, we suffer from vices which are not even Roman, keenly following the bouts between boys, who classifies his herds of pack animals into pairs according to age and color, who pays for the maintenance of the latest athletes. Again, do you call these men leisured, who spend many hours at the barber's simply to cut whatever grew overnight, to have a serious debate about every separate hair, to tidy up disarranged locks, or to train thinning ones from the sides to lie over the forehead? How angry they get if the barber has been a bit careless, as if he were trimming a real man. How they flare up if any of their mane is wrongly cut off, if any of it is badly arranged, or if it doesn't all fall into the right ringlets. Which of them would not rather have his country ruffled than his hair? Which would not be more anxious about the elegance of his head than its safety? Which would not rather be trim than honorable? Do you call those men leisured who divide their time between the comb and the mirror? And what about those who busy themselves in composing, listening to, or learning songs, while they distort their voice, whose best and simplest tone nature intended to be the straight one, into the most unnatural modulations, who are always drumming with their fingers as they beat time to an imagined tune, whom you can hear humming to themselves even when they are summoned on a serious, often even sorrowful affair? Theirs is not leisure, but indolent occupation, and good heavens, as for their banquets, I would not reckon on them on leisure times when I see how anxiously they arrange their silver, how carefully they gird up the tunics of their page boys, how on tender hooks they are to see how the cook has dealt with the boar, with what speed smooth-faced slaves rush around on their duties, with what skill birds are carved into appropriate portions, how carefully wretched little slaves wipe up the spittle of drunkards. By these means they cultivate a reputation for elegance and good taste, and to such an extent do their failings follow them into all areas of their private lives, that they cannot eat or drink without ostentation. I would also not count as leisured those who are carried around in a sedan chair and a litter, and turn up punctually for their drives as if it was forbidden to give them up, who have to be told when to bathe or to swim or to dine. They are so enervated by the excessive torpor of a self-indulgent mind that they cannot trust themselves to know if they are hungry. I am told that one of these self-indulgent people, if self-indulgence is the right word for unlearning the ordinary habits of human life, when he had been carried out from the bath and put in his sedan chair, asked, "Am I now sitting down?" Do you think that this man, who doesn't know if he is sitting down, knows whether he is alive, whether he sees, whether he is at leisure? It is difficult to say whether I pity him more if he really did not know this, or if he pretended not to know. They really experience forgetfulness of many things, but they also pretend to forget many things. They take delight in certain vices as proofs of their good fortune. It seems to be the lowly and contemptible man who knows that what he is doing. After that, see if you can accuse the mimes of intervening many details in order to attack luxury. In truth, they pass over more than they make up, and such a wealth of incredible vices have appeared in this generation, which shows talent in this one area, that we could now actually accuse the mimes of ignoring them. To think that there is anyone so lost in luxuries that he has to trust another to tell him if he is sitting down. So this is one is not leisure, and you must give him another description. He is ill, or even he is dead. The man who is really at leisure is also aware of it. But this one who is only half alive and needs to be told the positions of his own body, how can he control over any of his time? It would be tedious to mention individually those who have spent all their lives playing draughts or ball or carefully cooking themselves in the sun. They are not at leisure whose pleasures involve a serious commitment. For example, nobody will dispute that those people are busy about nothing who spend their time on useless literary studies. Even among the Romans, there is now a large company of those. It used to be a Greek failing to want to know how many oarsmen Ulysses had, whether the Iliad or the Odyssey was written first, and whether too they were by the same author, and other questions of the kind, which if you keep them to yourself in no way enhance your private knowledge, and if you publish them, make you appear more a bore than a scholar. But now the Romans too have been afflicted by the pointless enthusiasm for useless knowledge. Recently I heard somebody reporting which Roman general first did this or that. Duilius first won a naval battle. Curius Dentatus first included elephants in a triumph. So far these facts, even if they do not contribute to real glory, at least are concerned with exemplary services to the state. Such knowledge will not do any good. But if it interests us because of the appeal of these pointless facts, we can also excuse those who investigate who first persuaded the Romans to embark on a ship. That was Claudius, who for this reason was called a codex because a structure linking several wooden planks was called in antiquity a codex. Hence too, the law tables are called codices. And even today, the boats which carry provisions up the Tiber are called by the old-fashioned name codicardiae. Doubtless, too, it is of some importance to know that Valerius Corvinus first conquered Messana, and was the first of the family of the Valeri to be surnamed Messana from the name of the captured city, the spelling of which was gradually corrupted in everyday speech to Messala. Perhaps you will also allow someone to take seriously the fact that Lucius Sulla first exhibited lions loose in the circus, though at other times they were shown in fetters, and that javelin throwers were sent by King Bocchus to kill them. This too may be excused, but does it serve any good purpose? To know that Pompey first exhibited in the circus a fight involving 18 elephants, pitting innocent men against them in a staged battle, a leader of the state, and as we are told, a man of notable kindliness. Among the leaders of old, he thought it would be a memorable spectacle to kill human beings in a novel way. Are they to fight to the death? Not good enough. Are they to be torn to pieces? Not good enough. Let them be crushed by animals of enormous bulk. It would be better for such things to be forgotten, lest in the future someone in power might learn about them and not wish to be outdone in such a piece of inhumanity. Oh, what darkness does great prosperity cast over our minds.